Playing a loving partner on television is one of the easier acting jobs in Hollywood. You read the lines, hit the marks, and let the writers handle the conflict. But for the people on this list, the real relationships happening off camera were far more complicated and far more painful than anything on the page. Abuse, manipulation, public breakdowns, years of denial, and cycles that kept pulling people back long after they should have walked away. These are 8 sitcom actors whose real-life relationships were anything but scripted. Here are 8 sitcom actors with toxic relationships. The man who was arrested on Christmas morning. Charlie Sheen spent more than a decade playing Charlie Harper on 2.5 Men, a man whose entire identity was built around an inability to commit, a talent for self-destruction, and a total absence of accountability in his relationships. The character was considered broadly funny. The pattern it reflected in Sheen's real life was considerably less so. His history of documented violence toward women began long before 2.5 Men made him the highest-paid actor on American television. In 1996, he was arrested for allegedly beating a girlfriend named Brittany Ashland, who told police he had grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head into the marble floor of his home, then threatened to kill her if she told anyone. He pleaded no contest the following year and received a suspended sentence. In 2005, his then-wife, Denise Richards, filed for divorce while pregnant with their second child, alleging in court documents a pattern of drug use, gambling, violence, and threats, including an incident where she said Sheen had pushed her over and threatened to kill her in front of their children. She obtained a restraining order. He called the allegations a smear campaign. Then came Christmas morning, 2009. Sheen was arrested in Aspen, Colorado, on domestic violence charges, after his then-wife, Brooke Mueller, reportedly told police that he had held a knife to her throat and said, "You better be in fear." Mueller later attempted to recant. Sheen insisted she had been the aggressor. By the time a judge was done with the case, Sheen had stood in an Aspen courtroom and answered one direct question: "Why are you pleading guilty?" He replied, "Because I'm guilty, Your Honor." He was sentenced to 30 days in rehab, 30 days of probation, and 36 hours of anger management. 2.5 Men went on hiatus for a week and then resumed. His manager reportedly told CNN that the show couldn't afford to lose him. "Charlie, without him, there is no show," he said. That remained CBS's position until Sheen called the show's creator a clown and an anti-Semitic slur. That, it turned out, was where the line was. Married on a beach in a bikini. Divorced in 96 hours. Pamela Anderson played CJ Parker on Baywatch, and her relationship with Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee is one of the most documented, most analyzed, and most romanticized toxic relationships in entertainment history. They met on New Year's Eve 1994. He reportedly came up to her at a Hollywood club, grabbed her, and licked her face. She found this charming. 6 weeks later, she flew to Mexico for a photo shoot. He followed her. 96 hours after that, they were married on a beach, she in a white bikini, he in khaki shorts with tattoos of each other's names on their ring fingers. What followed was 3 years of a relationship that alternated between apparent euphoria and serious dysfunction. A disgruntled electrician who had been fired from a renovation job at their Malibu home stole a private sex tape from a safe and eventually sold it, an event that subjected both of them to an invasion of privacy neither fully recovered from. The tape's distribution generated enormous stress on a relationship already strained by competing careers, new parenthood, and what multiple accounts describe as Lee's pattern of heavy drinking and volatility. The marriage ended on the morning of February 24, 1998. Lee reportedly could not find a pan he needed to cook with and threw what he later described, in his own memoir, as a tantrum, like a little baby. When Anderson told him to calm down and called her mother to come over, because Lee was frightening her. Lee, by his own account in the dirt, kicked her in the backside while she was holding their 7-week-old son Dylan in her arms. She called the police. He was arrested on a felony spousal abuse charge. He later pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 200 hours of community service, counseling, and a mandatory donation to a domestic violence fund. Anderson filed for divorce days after the arrest. The story did not end there. They reconciled multiple times over the following decade, each reunion generating brief hope, and then the same cycle returning. In her memoir Love, Pamela, Anderson described the toll the relationship took on her in terms far more raw than anything she had said publicly before. Lee, who has since married again, denied in a Twitter post that he was ever abusive, bizarrely suggesting Anderson was still texting him to get back together. Their son Brandon eventually punched Lee in self-defense, after Lee allegedly became enraged over something Anderson had said about the marriage in a television interview. A relationship that began with a face lick at a New Year's Eve party left damage that, by multiple accounts, lasted decades. The Frasier star and the 13-year battle. Kelsey Grammer played Dr. Frasier Crane, one of television's most celebrated portraits of emotional intelligence, for 20 consecutive years. His personal life, over the same period, told a considerably more complicated story. His third marriage, to Camille Donatacci, lasted from 1997 to 2011 and produced 2 children and a highly public dissolution that neither party has ever fully closed. The 2 sides of the marriage tell different stories. Grammer has described it in various interviews as a union that was effectively over before it began. He has said that Camille always wanted to be famous and that he gave her a spot on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills as a parting gift, a characterization that Camille and most observers found spectacularly unkind. Grammer also described reaching a breaking point the day of his mother's funeral, when Camille allegedly exploded in anger and threatened divorce, the same threat she had apparently made, according to Grammer, repeatedly over their 8 years together. "I realized at that moment I was done," he said. Camille's account was darker. Psychiatric records that surfaced during subsequent legal proceedings included notes from her therapist stating that Camille had described both verbal and physical abuse during the marriage, including a specific incident where Grammer allegedly grabbed her arm and injured her shoulder. Grammer has never directly addressed those allegations in public, defaulting instead to remarks about Camille being pathetic for continuing to discuss the marriage. What is not in dispute is how it ended. Grammer began an affair with a flight attendant named Kate Walsh while still married, and the relationship became public while Camille was filming the first season of Real Housewives. She found out during production, in a phone call, off camera. The cameras caught her immediate aftermath. The split was settled with Camille receiving half of Grammer's $30 million in earnings from the marriage. She told producers she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She appears to have chosen both, repeatedly, for several seasons. The marriage that started as an affair and ended the same way. Tori Spelling spent 9 seasons on Beverly Hills, 92-10 playing Donna Martin, the most reliably wholesome character on a show not especially known for wholesomeness. In real life, her most publicized relationship began on the set of a low-budget Lifetime movie in Ottawa, Canada, in 2005, when she and actor Dean McDermott, both of whom were married to other people at the time, spent the night together after their first dinner. "The following day, when I woke up next to Dean," Spelling wrote in her memoir, "I had no regrets." She has since spent approximately 2 decades regretting various aspects of what followed. The marriage that grew out of that affair produced 5 children, multiple reality television shows, and a cycle of breakdown and recovery that played out with unusual thoroughness in public. In December 2013, Us Weekly reported that McDermott had been unfaithful to Spelling while filming a television show in Toronto, having a 2-day affair with a 28-year-old woman who told the magazine he had described his marriage to Spelling as sexless. McDermott subsequently confirmed the affair by announcing he was entering a treatment facility. "I am truly sorry for the mistakes I have made," he said in a statement. The couple processed the infidelity on a Lifetime docuseries called True Tory, in which Spelling told a couple's therapist on camera that she could never give McDermott enough and feared he would stray again. During one session, McDermott broke down and said he thought he had blown everything good in his life. He proposed to Spelling for a 3rd time 2 years later. By 2023, the marriage had collapsed for what appeared to be the final time. McDermott later told the Daily Mail that for years, he had been drinking a 5th of tequila every night along with prescription medication, in a separate room from his family, while his wife checked on him to make sure he was still alive. The children, he said, had been frightened of him. Spelling filed for divorce on the debut episode of her podcast, announcing it to her listeners and, simultaneously, to McDermott, who was reportedly at work at the time and was not forewarned. Both relationships in which each of them had engaged, the one they blew up and the one they built from the wreckage, had now ended the same way. She has described herself, in the years since, as finally free. 30 years of something they still can't name. Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman met in 1970 when Perlman went to see a friend perform in an off-Broadway play. DeVito was in the cast. They moved in together 2 weeks later and eventually married in January 1982, by which point they had already been together for more than a decade. They had 3 children, built a production company together that produced Pulp Fiction and Erin Brockovich, and were regarded, for 30 years, as one of the most improbably durable couples in Hollywood. Then, in October 2012, they announced they were separating. What went wrong has never been fully explained by either of them, and what has emerged has come largely through anonymous sources and careful non-answers. Perlman, speaking on Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast in 2023, said that there were a lot of reasons for the split that she was not going to discuss, and that it had been very difficult at first. She did not elaborate. A source quoted at the time of the separation told a tabloid that DeVito had been, despite his lovable public image, quite the flirt, and that Perlman had spent years turning a blind eye to behavior that had eventually become impossible to ignore. DeVito has said nothing substantive about the cause of the split, which is consistent with his approach to all personal questions. The twist in this story is that they never actually divorced. More than a decade after separating, they remain legally married and, according to Perlman, remain close friends who see each other regularly. "We agree on enough things," she told an interviewer in 2018. "So why ruin that with the yucky things that come with a divorce?" They appear to have arrived at some arrangement that suits them both, not the marriage they had, and not a formal ending of it either, but something in between that neither of them has found a precise word for. The 3 children they raised together appear, by all accounts, to be the organizing principle of whatever it is. It is, in its way, one of the more functional outcomes on this list, which is a low bar, but still worth noting. The wife who discovered the truth on a phone call. There is a particular cruelty in how Camille Grammer learned that her marriage was over. She was in the middle of filming the first season of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, a show her then-husband Kelsey had encouraged her to do. She has since said, as a way of keeping her occupied while he was away filming, when she received a phone call confirming what she had begun to suspect. Grammer was in a relationship with someone else. He had been for some time. He had not told her. The cameras were not rolling for the call itself, but they were there for everything that followed. And what they captured was a woman navigating the collapse of a 13-year marriage in real time on a reality television show, without any warning that it was coming. Grammer has framed the marriage, in his various public statements, as one long exercise in staying in something he had outgrown. He has said it was over as soon as it began, that Camille was motivated primarily by a desire for fame, and that he ultimately gave her the reality show as a parting gift before he left. Camille has described this framing as a rewriting of history designed to make him the victim of a marriage he had, according to her, often made genuinely frightening. The two accounts cannot be reconciled. What can be established is the outcome. Grammer married Kate Walsh, his new partner, 12 days after his divorce from Camille was finalized, in February 2011. Camille went back to filming The Real Housewives. She found, somewhat unexpectedly, that audiences were on her side. She has continued on various Real Housewives franchises in the years since, and has spoken with increasing directness about what the marriage cost her. Grammer, for his part, has maintained that he does not find her worth discussing. The cycle that kept pulling them back, the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee story, has been examined so many times, in so many formats, documentaries, a Hulu miniseries, multiple memoirs, that it has acquired the quality of myth. But the detail that tends to get lost in the mythology is the one that matters most, the cycle itself. The couple divorced in 1998 after Lee was convicted of felony spousal abuse and sentenced to jail. They reconciled the following year. They separated again. They reconciled in 2008, with Lee telling Rolling Stone, "We've only given it a try 800 times 801. Here we go." They separated again by 2010. Lee's own son punched him in 2018 after an altercation in which Lee allegedly became violent following an Anderson interview that touched on the abuse. Anderson has written and spoken about the relationship at various points in her life, with both tenderness and clear-eyed assessment of the damage it caused. "There was Tommy, and then there was nobody else," she told People in 2015. "He was the love of my life." In Love, Pamela, her memoir, she described the pattern in more honest terms, the intensity that made it feel like nothing else, and the same intensity making it impossible to sustain. Lee, in his version of events, has maintained that Anderson shared responsibility for the violence and has suggested, in a since-deleted tweet responding to a Piers Morgan interview, that Anderson was still texting him to get back together, even as she was giving interviews describing his abuse. What the story illustrates, as much as anything, is how effectively a powerful early bond can override what people know, intellectually, about what is good for them. Neither Anderson nor Lee is a person lacking in self-awareness. Both have described the relationship with clarity in certain moments. Neither was able, for years, to simply stay away from it. The separation that wasn't. The Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman story sits differently from the others on this list, and that difference is worth sitting with. What they had was not, by most visible measures, an abusive relationship. What it appears to have been, based on the available evidence, is a long marriage that accumulated damage quietly, the kind that looks fine from the outside for years, and then, one day, is announced as a separation with no further explanation. A lot of reasons, Perlman said. That was all. The reason it belongs on this list is precisely because of how little information has ever emerged. In a culture where celebrity relationships are dissected in real time, and where both DeVito and Perlman were among the most recognized television actors of their era, the near-total absence of a public account of what happened is itself a kind of statement. Whatever occurred in the years the tabloid source described as having been sour, the decade or more of unhappiness reportedly preceding the announcement was absorbed entirely in private. Their children were not part of any public dispute. There were no lawsuits, no reality shows processing the grief, no memoirs naming names. Perlman has since described arriving eventually at a pretty decent understanding with DeVito. He has said essentially nothing. They remain married on paper. They appear to genuinely like each other. The gap between what that sounds like and what led to a 30-year marriage quietly ending in 2012 is the part neither of them has ever filled in. It is, in its own quiet way, the most interesting gap on this entire list.